Here it comes, 6:59. Okay, welcome everyone. 7 o'clock, Committee of the Whole of February 22nd, 2022. I'm Councillor Jeff Bateman. I'm acting mayor for the month of February, and Mayor Tate sends her regrets tonight. And I'll be chairing the meeting. Now, we're public participation at the top of the agenda. Council meetings are open to the public to attend in person in this latest twist in the saga, and virtual public participation will no longer be available. All public attendees, we have none in the house tonight, just to note, they must wear a mask and remain seated for the duration of the meeting until they wish to address council. And we've returned here on council to the previous policy of masks are mandatory in all indoor public spaces except for work areas. And that is within the district of Souk, and that does include council tables, and staff are not masked either. And we did a quick survey and we all agreed that that was the best policy for us sitting at the table. So moving on, call to order. We're meeting tonight as ever with gratitude and respect on the traditional Coast Salish territories of the Sauk First Nation. Couple of housekeeping notes. I did mention the masks update. And I think that was the one note I need to make tonight. Yeah, that's right. So approval of the agenda, that the agenda for the February 22nd Committee of the Whole meeting be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Oh, we don't need a seconder tonight. Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Okay. So we have one item on the agenda tonight, which is the strategic priorities chart update. And this is the update on the strat plan 6-month report that we approved back on July 26th of last year. And over to CAO McInnes.
Just waiting to queue up the PowerPoint presentation.
So this is the quarterly update, and of course this priorities chart we will be updating the final 6 months of our term of office here at a special meeting next week amongst ourselves.
March 7th.
March 7th.
Oh, sorry. No, March 4th.
March 4th. Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, we're still waiting. And so at the March 4th session, we will update the priorities chart for these final 6 months, and that will be presented at a future Committee of the Whole.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And here's the presentation.
All right, there we go. Thank you, Councillor Bateman. So as you say, this report covers the fourth quarter of 2021. A little bit late in coming. We had a strat plan planned for January, but of course COVID came back, and we decided that we would wait until the announcement from Dr. Henry, the latest one, and it looks as though now we can return to some meetings in person. So that meeting now will take place on March 4th. Looking forward to reconstituting the priorities chart at that time. But as you know, our strategic priorities chart is made up of 3 sections. There's council priorities, operational strategies, and advocacy items. So I will go through the first 2 sections tonight, and then I'm going to ask committee members to update their advocacy work when we get to that point in the agenda. So the next one, no, one back. So the first of the 3 strategic goals in our council strategic plan is to build a reputable organization. And the first action under goal number 1 is to develop an engagement plan for 2022 5-year financial plan. And I'm going to go through this one in a little bit detail because it's exceptional work, and it sets the foundation for our annual planning and budget cycle. And it's an iterative process, and we will improve upon it each year as we go through it. So the planning for 2020.
Quick question, Mr. McInnes, can we interrupt you at our leisure?
Yeah, we got so much
Okay.
time tonight,
Okay.
and you know, I hopefully we can give that to administration as well if there's something that they want to add that
Okay.
I'm not reporting on. It'd be great if they contribute as well.
Excellent, thank you.
So the planning for 2022 began with a series of pop-up events from June 23rd to July 16th. The pop-ups were in high traffic areas around town and gave people the opportunity to ask staff questions and participate in a quick poll on priority spending. Then we hosted an online service level survey from August 31st to September 26th. This was augmented by a series of community chats with council and staff members at various locations around town. An engagement report was provided to council on October 18th, and a budget open house was held on November 1st. The budget was presented to council on November 23rd and received readings, and this was followed by a digital information session and a pre-recorded YouTube video that we released on November 27th. Again, just a really good piece of work, and provided some insight into priority spending that was in the 2022 budget. Then we hosted an in-person open house in council chambers on December 1st, and the 2022-2026 5-year financial plan bylaw was ultimately adopted by council on December 13th, 2021. And just for those listening and for council, there's a bunch of great information on our Let's Talk Souk Budget 2022 page, and it's full of great information, and we plan on improving this process annually as we go through. But really, this is the backbone of our annual planning and budget cycle and our engagement process. And I'll talk a little bit more about this because this is a next action on the strategic priorities chart as well.
Ms. Gray, anything you'd like to add to that?
Nothing at this time. I'll see whatever else Norm's going to add about the capital reporting, but yeah, just echoing what he said. Every year we've been trying to improve the community engagement piece of the financial plan, and I think this year we definitely set the bar for 2021. We all the engagement we did to build 2022's budget was, more than we'd ever done before, and there's always room for improvement, but I'm pretty happy with the public participation that we've received and the feedback we got on specific areas. So looking forward to kind of next 2023's version of this engagement that will start later this year.
In terms of the public engagement, one of the things that I know has been happening, and I'm hoping just to get a little bit of a better feel, is the education portion. Because my impression is that, well, I think we all know that local government is not necessarily the most fascinating form of government that everyone follows all the time, and that what's happening at that level and what's happening with the tax dollars isn't necessarily clear. And I know that we've all been hoping that in this public engagement process, the community will become more aware of where the money's going. Do you have a sense that that's, I know we're right at the start of trying to get this going, but do you have a sense that it's going in that direction? Are people becoming more aware of where their tax dollars are going?
I think absolutely. Those that participate learned a lot this year. And we heard that from a number of people, especially at the open house that was here in council chamber with all of our boards up. And that understanding is there, but there's a lot of competing interest for people's precious time, and people will participate and engage if it's important to them. And you know, we can do our best to put the information out there. But those that do participate, I think they've learned a lot. And you know, to augment that as well, some of the stuff that we put out around the assessment information versus the taxation information was an example of how we use the tools that we have to do that education piece.
And just to further add on that, as far as the public engagement piece, and the education piece, Ms. Moog and I have been talking about kind of doing a different version of the council orientation that happens from after the election, of doing some sort of public facing version of that possibly this year, because we obviously need to think about that for the election. So that would just be a additional add-on piece that's high level, why do we even do this? And then can kind of drill down into what does this mean for Souk kind of thing. So kind of add a different higher level snapshot of what happens and why, and then drill down to the specific for Souk. So that's definitely something we're looking at trying to roll out this year as well.
Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. I had quite a bit of input from different people in the public saying that they found it very, very refreshing to be included in the whole process. And a lot of the information they were not aware of. So when you hear it back to a councillor, you're doing something right. Something went right somewhere. And in a time of COVID too, which is really amazing. I think the next time around, we'll have an ability to reach more people in a different setting. So I thought it was well done. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll echo that too. That citizen budget survey, the depth of detail in there, it's remarkable, really. And I'm glad it lives on at the Let's Talk Souk website. And the pie charts and wonderful, you know, when I came into office and researching, there wasn't a lot available from the district at that point. So thank you very much for this work.
Thank you. The next item. Don't think we're working anymore. Is the capital project reporting updates. Not a whole lot to report on this. The quarterly reports did start in April of 2021, and they are scheduled by the Director of Finance to continue on a quarterly basis. So we will just move this into the way that we do things, and suggesting that this gets removed from the strategic priority chart in the next iteration. The next item is to perform a follow-up culture audit. Our culture work has been impacted significantly comparatively with COVID. The committee has done some exceptional work, but the group and I certainly agree that we need to wrap this up with some in-person meetings, and that just was not going to happen. So we, as I say on the slide here, we thought we were able to go on September 29th with an all-staff meeting, but that got pulled up from under us just briefly before with the set of restrictions in in-person meetings. So we're not going to do an all-staff meeting till step 4 of the BC Restart program is in place, and I'm not even sure if we're still using that same language, step 4, and where we're at. But the next update from the provincial health officer is, I believe, is March 16th. So we'll see what happens there. If the step 4 is this thing that we're still looking at, or where we go with masking and vaccine passports going forward. But the culture committee will hand off their work. We do have a couple of employee sessions scheduled for March, where the culture committee is going to wrap up their work. And basically it's all of their data and recommendations they're going to be handing off from their committee to all of us as staff. Part of that is we're going to be starting our performance conversations. That's a process where supervisors and staff will formalize the aligning of our annual work planning processes with our strategic goals. So part of the two main themes in the culture work that we've done so far were around communication, internal communications and external communications. And then seeing this line of sight from, the work that people do in the organization on a daily basis up to the higher strategic goals. So this performance conversation is really meant to provide that line of sight and put a process in place where an annual discussion with supervisors and their reports happen. And then we still are committed to doing a follow-up culture assessment, and we'll schedule that sometime after these March meetings.
Any questions, gentlemen? No. I'm curious, so to someone on the outside looking in, and they hear culture assessment, culture audit. So we're talking about an organizational culture here at the District of Sauk. And its ability to interact with the culture at large. Yeah.
The interaction piece, I'm not sure. It's really the culture of the way that we do work in Sauk. And, Sauk is still a relatively young organization. 21 years old now, I guess. A lot of our infrastructure and our processes were built to sort of this rural standard, and we're trying to get up to the tools and the process that we need to be a community now of over 15,000 people that's quickly growing, and processes and the way that we interact in place. So, one of the things that came from the first culture assessment is there is a huge desire amongst our staff here to provide excellent services to those that we serve. So again, that's part of how we move beyond where we've been to this place where excellence is something that we not only strive for, but we attain. The next slide, please. Review org chart for new 2022 positions. So of course, this is complete. As I said earlier, our budget was adopted on December 13th, 2021. The non-market growth that's within the 2022 budget was about $280,000. Council approved 3 new positions for 2022. And then on February 14th, we came forward with a recommendation to spend some of our surplus, and council agreed to that. So we have additional resources for building subdivision applications, and our 4th building inspector started with us this morning. So had a good chat with Stephen at the end of the day today, and he's really excited to be here. And it's a real pleasure to have him here, a Sauk boy, and excited to come to work for the district, and I'm sure he'll make an impact on our processes. And then I'm suggesting tonight that we continue to use non-market growth. We've talked before that at some point, we could use non-market growth for other things, but I think continuing to grow our staff, we know where the pressure points are, and I'm sure council understands that as well. So we'll continue to work together to identify priority positions as we go forward. We have 3 actions under goal number 2 in the strategic priorities chart. Goal number 2 is to demonstrate leadership in climate action. And the first item is to consider climate action social mobilization. So the funding, as you know, has been approved for the development of our storytelling project. A series of activities are planned for April 18th to the 23rd to launch the 7% solution and to launch the draft climate action plan, which will be an iterative process for a number of months after that. But really the goal of this work is to inspire Sauk residents to make a change and reduce their personal greenhouse gas emissions. So all of this work is coming together quite nicely. We have some very dedicated and exceptionally smart people working on this, and it's quite amazing watching the work proceed. The 7% solution is really the heart of our emission reduction work. So the 7% solution campaign will be launched during Earth Day activities of this year in April. The campaign will include stories from local residents who've made shifts from home heating and transportation. And there will be a free workshop hosted by a community energy coach on April 21st that covers the topic of considering a heat pump. There's much more that'll happen during that Earth Week, but some of those things have been nailed down at this point.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you. That all sounds amazing. One of the things that I'm looking forward to in this, and I'm hoping is going to be a part of it, is one of those old-fashioned type of things where, you know, you have a kind of the thermometer or the thing that goes up as you reach your goal. And I know that it's actually been a challenge with climate change, that people don't actually understand what sort of impact they can have, or, you know, whether or not they're having any impact at all. Why should I bother? It's not going to make any difference anyway. I think that especially with things like heat pumps, if we have certain goals and we're very clear about those goals, and I think the numbers have been crunched here, we are pretty clear about our goals. We should know exactly how many households we need to switch over to heat pumps. We should know, you know, how many people need to switch transportation modalities in order to make an impact. If we could actually record this, and every time someone makes a shift and lets us know, or someone reports, we could actually just bump that thing up. I think it would give people a lot of hope and a sense of accomplishment, and it would actually help motivate the community. So I'm hoping we're gonna have something like that. I'm reasonably sure there will be, but I just hope.
Yeah, so my understanding of the tracking and reporting at this point is some of it's fairly easy. You know, we can get data from BC Hydro on who's taking advantage of rebates for heat pumps, for example. Getting data for who is on oil right now is a little bit tougher. And really, those are the high priority switches from oil and natural gas to electricity. So getting that information, we're still sort of ferreting out and understanding the data. But the hope is, yeah, we've done the math from the early work from the Climate Action Committee on the numbers that we need in each of those modality shifts to reach the 7% solution. But if we get a bunch that are oil heating and natural gas heating, of course, it's going to be a bigger gain than switching from electric heat boards to electric heat pumps.
Councillor Beddoes.
To our CAO, when somebody puts in a heat pump in suit, do they have to take out a permit to do that? Is it a permit one?
No.
So, I mean, so we have to rely on BC Hydro just because of the rebate program, is that right?
Yeah, and there's some tracking that CRD is doing as well. There's this whole concierge program that we're now part of. So the data is there. As I say,
So CRD is tracking it through the businesses that put heat pumps in, I suspect.
well, and residential as well.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just pipe in at this point that I've been working with Denise Withers, our climate action coordinator, and Christina Moog on this this launch for Earth Day, a 7% solution, the climate action plan. It's all integrated. Maya Carlsfeld recently provided us with at the Climate Action Committee with a presentation on the Partners for Climate Action, which Councillor St. Pierre, you brought forward to SUC, and we signed up in 2019, one of 400 municipalities. And it's a remarkably efficient system, so that we'll be able to see as the data is inputted. I think it's milestone 4 when the implementation process begins. We'll be able to track all those positive steps forward, the number of people shifting to more electricity versus oil, for example. I'd like to have Ms. Carlsfeld here at some future committee of the whole, where we can hear about her. It boggles my mind, frankly, but there's a lot of opportunities to see progress. And this is a really efficient, clean, clear system that will show us the steps forward. Yeah, please, Council.
Are we going to be planting any trees this year?
I don't think that's part of the strategy this year.
I must say I'm very disappointed to hear that, but thank you.
Yeah, I might add that everything is on the table at this point, and I think Ms. Boquist, the Parks Department, has been exploring with the CRD participation in this large national campaign. So the question is, at the CRD level, I think you have to commit to planting, I hate to say a number, maybe as much as 10,000 trees, and that's beyond our capability, but partnered with the CRD, it's quite possible. Jessica Boquist also states fall is the best time to do this planting, and it's felt that Earth Day activities might be a bit limited given COVID, and hopefully we'll be in the clear by the fall and we can do some significant tree planting activity at that point. So I think these ideas are still in the works, and yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to register my, I just thought it was such an easy thing for us to do. Obviously, it must be a little bit more complicated, but all people I talk to is it's pretty easy solution to climate change, and it was one of the first ones suggested 2 years ago, and it's not even on the horizon. So I'm a little disappointed in that, but we will carry on.
Well, I'll point out that just that your thoughts, your name comes up routinely at our meetings, and it's albedos and tree planting. So it's certainly front of mind.
Yeah, I think if we can find a source for trees and for seedlings or small saplings, and make them available to the public in the public works yard, maybe for the Earth Day celebration. I know Hydro was giving out trees at one point, or maybe one of the seed orchards, or Western Forest Products, somebody like that might be willing to contribute, and we could hand them out to residents to plant 10,000 trees. There's 15,000 of us. It shouldn't be that tough.
Yes, Councillor St. Pierre.
Just want to take note also that at the last land use committee, which Councillor Jeunesse was kind enough to attend, we did actually discuss the tree bylaw at some length. And it was a really good conversation, and some of the really critical thoughts that came out, or some of my gleaned thoughts on that one, were that we shouldn't be planting just any trees. First of all, we have to be looking at what trees are actually going to survive if it gets a little warmer. We have to look at trees that don't get 100 feet tall and then fall on people's houses. We have to look at what kind of trees will actually provide the kind of cooling and the kind of, like, what are our goals with the trees? What do we want to achieve with the trees? Which trees do we want in an urban forest with an urban canopy? So a lot of this is going to actually affect what kind of trees we want to make available to residents. I think it'd be wonderful during Earth Day if we actually had that kind of education. So for example, these are the trees that you should be considering. These are the reasons why, and basically promote that urban canopy and promote a tree management strategy during Earth Day. I think that that's something that we can really push forward in the community potentially, but that'll be up to staff and to the people organizing.
I'm sure Ms. Moog is watching as she does, so she'll be taking note of these.
Texting me as we speak. So a couple, three responses. The Partners for Climate Protection video has been recorded, so I can send that to council so they can see the session that Maya did with the public. I think there was one member of the public, but we tried. The second thing is with trees, the Partners for Climate Protection does not include sequestration at this point. So it won't have any measurement on our emissions reduction. And that's part of the reason why. But there is, Councillor Beddoes, we are planting, we got a small grant from BC Hydro, so we are planting 30 trees with the local schools, and we just put 7 new trees in the dog park. So there are new trees in town, but it was just a small grant that we got through the regreening program with BC Hydro.
37 trees. I'm very pleased that we got 37 trees. I just made, sorry, to the chair. I just thought from, I know it may be hard to measure, but I just thought from the PR program, that was just a wonderful way to get the kids and the families interested in climate change. And so I am a little frustrated that we weren't able to bring that on, but I do understand you have other things to deal with. It's not all about what I want, but I'd like to think it would be. But I just thought, man, oh man, I go back to when I was a kid and they gave us a tree to take home, and that was a big, big impact on me. And I remember it all my life. So just for what it's worth, thanks.
We are part of an application. I'm not sure the status of it with CRD as well through the national 1 billion tree program. So I'm not sure what the status of that. The third action under goal number 2 is to complete our climate action plan. You've seen this chart a number of times, and we are on target to have our climate action plan complete by August of 2022. The plan is being informed by significant local research, so I'm confident it will be a local plan. And the goal is to deliver a plan that's accessible, actionable, measurable, and engaging. So that work is going on, and our climate action coordinator, Ms. Carol Spell, she's doing a great job. She impresses me every day. So it was quite a coup to have someone in East Souk with the experience that she has to come on and guide this process for us. Goal number 3 in the 2019 to 2022 Council Strategic Plan is to manage long-term growth while enhancing community identity, vitality, and safety. And the key action to managing growth is completion of the official community plan. So the OCP Advisory Committee held its final meeting on February 16th, and the committee has endorsed the draft OCP dated February 9th, 2022, and recommended forwarding the draft to council for bylaw consideration. So we're just formalizing a special meeting where we will go into committee of the whole, so we can have some better conversation on the draft, and hopefully that's going to happen on March 7th. So it's a Monday night, and that will be when council receives the draft OCP from the committee. I'm sure Council Beddoes may want to say something, and Mr. Paolo as well, but what an incredible group of people we have on that committee. They were so eager to get going out of the gate. You know, we got them back to a place, I think, where they said, just wait for the draft. When the draft comes, your heavy lifting starts, and they were prepared, and they did a magnificent job. So certainly from administration's point of view, we thank them for their efforts.
Yeah, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just like to add to that is I must say I'm very proud of the committee. Again, I was really taken aback by the quality of people and their dedication to getting this document. But I also want to give kudos to the staff. I mean, Matthew, Catherine, and everybody responded so well to any of our concerns and addressed them, each and every one of them, in great detail. So we're pretty proud of the document, and we're looking forward to feedback from council and the community at large. It wasn't without some problems, because trying to do this in COVID was a very, very difficult task, but I have to give credit to our communications person and staff. I think they did the absolute best job they could under the circumstances. They made every effort to contact as many people as they can. And knowing that we couldn't have town halls, the committee itself reached out on an individual basis to people they knew and made themselves available to try and bring this document to where it is today. And I think they were very successful at that. So overall, very pleased with staff, pleased with the committee, and hopefully council is pleased with it in the end. I'm sure it's not a perfect document, but I think Matthew can test, it's pretty close, right? Anyway, I just want to say thanks to all those that put the effort in. And it wasn't without some trials and tribulations, as it is when you're dealing with people and smart people. But I think we made it. We got there. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Beddoes. It was interesting to watch last week's, I think it was last week, was it not? And you gave a timeline for moving forward, not a timeline, but a steps. So we're going to have first reading on March 7th. And then Matthew, would you take us through? Because we have public opportunities still for contributions.
That's correct. So March 7th is the key date for us to reach, because that's officially when the document is read into bylaw with first reading. And then from that point forward, it's going to be going out to circulation to our government agencies. And at that time, the public will be able to provide comment on what council has seen at first reading. And we anticipate as we approach second reading that there will be a lot of input and recommendations that council will wish to consider to amend that bylaw, should council wish to do so, and then proceeding through with the public hearing process. And that's the key piece that we see, because that is where the public will have their opportunity to address council with their comments for further consideration. And then should council further wish to amend the document before we ultimately wait. And this is a timing component that we'll have to take a look at, is to see, has the Capital Regional District accepted as the board the regional context statement? If they have, then we can move forward through towards ultimate bylaw adoption. But that's a key timeline piece that we're dependent on the CRD accepting that. And so we're working closely with their staff to try and get our timelines as tight as possible with theirs.
Now, this public hearing, would that happen in this hall, which has all of 30 seats, or will we go to perhaps the community hall? Al, Councillor Beddoes, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, it's once we make the committee makes its presentation, then we're done. So it will be a staff function if what hall we use. My feeling is from what I've seen and what I've dealt with people, I would think that this hall would be quite adequate to deal with the public. Certainly a lot of people will say things, but how many actually show up and make the thing is another thing. And the more the merrier, but the committee basically stands down once they make their presentation. So unless the council and wants them to be on an advisory position for the next 3 months until it's finally adopted, that's up to us, I guess. So I don't think that we're not in any plans for a public hearing other than here. And I guess when it comes to staff, and they can wade in on this, if we found out that we had 300 people lined up outside that want to speak to it, then it would up the staff to make that determination where we have an open house or whatever. So we've got Carolyn.
Okay, any thoughts? Yeah, Ms. Mishata.
Thank you. We are back to full capacity for our gallery. So I think we're probably around 70 or 80 chairs. The only thing to consider if we were to go to another venue is we wouldn't have our technology and the availability to record the session and things like that. But, we can see what we can do, because depending on the timing, hopefully the lounge over here would be available, and we might be able to broadcast a stream through there so that people can still watch it, and maybe rotate people in and out if they want to participate. So I think that we could make it work.
And I suppose if on the night in question, it is particularly packed in here and there's a lot of comment, we might schedule a second part to the public hearing at a larger venue.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Adjourn to another night.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot going on in this sandbox right now. I'm not sure if you're following the comments of Minister Eby, taking some power away from local government when it comes to development. And at the same time, you saw in the budget information today that housing starts are up 26% over 2020. So, you know, how much is enough? It's an interesting time we're in right now with housing. You know, and even Minister Eby saying that there's going to be some minimum standards. I would suggest a community that's growing at the rate that Souk is growing, we're meeting all of the minimum standards that I would see imposed on local government. So all interesting. The next item is the parking and wastewater requirements for secondary suites. So as we just talked about, encouraging a variety of housing, including the missing middle, and doing that in a way that's fair and equitable when it comes to fees and services is a work in progress for us. But this work really is tied to a couple of significant initiatives that are underway, not the least of which is the OCP and the sewer service area expansion. So all of that stuff is being looked at in tandem and how we do that going forward. So this is not going to happen over the next little bit. So we're suggesting as we go through the modeling for rates going forward, this will come as part of that work. So we're looking at probably not bringing this back to council for the next 24 months or so as we work through all of these different iterations and opportunities for moving to different rates. Right now, the parcel tax that's on the current core sewer service area expires in January or in 2026.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Just to your staff, through to staff. I remember that when this question came, when the secondary suite question was discussed in the land use committee, one of the thoughts that did come up fairly strongly was to address one of the main concerns that residents and I guess the community has over secondary suites, which is inadequate parking, basically parking overflowing onto streets, blocking safety vehicle, blocking fire rescue, and so on and so forth. One of the suggestions was to look at potentially having some sort of permitting on strictly the streets where there were actually existing problems to try and remove some of that congestion and improve safety. And I was just curious as to whether that was going to be part of this package, or is it being considered or not?
In terms of the existing roads where there has been concern, the permitting of where parking could be provided on streets wasn't considered. It was the components to any new any new development for new suites going in that we would be looking specifically at the R3 zoning. That was something that the committee had discussed, and that being the minimum parcel size for residentials at its smallest amount, that there could be provisions that there would have to be a minimum parcel size if those R3 lots were to consider including a secondary suite, and that the parking requirements would also be looked at a little bit more stringently. But that was something that was going to come along later with a more comprehensive zoning bylaw review to that aspect.
So if I understand, that sounds like we're basically looking at new builds in terms of how to better manage parking issues in new builds, but we're not necessarily going to be at this point in time looking at resolving some of the congestion on the streets that are already existing where we have secondary suites. Is that correct? Or
through the planning and development department, that's correct. There wouldn't be any further analysis. I'm not certain if operations or enforcement were looking further, but that wasn't something that was being established as part of this review process.
And I would suggest most of that congestion, those are legal suites, and to go back and try and remedy that now would be a fair piece of work.
I think that the recommendation or the thoughts have not been about remedying, trying to make them illegal or do anything like that, but really just to make sure that in the streets that were being blocked and where it wasn't possible for ambulances or our fire chief to get through, that there would be some means of actually taking some of that congestion off so that those streets could be safe for that traffic to pass. And so it's really just looking at what we can do to get some of that parking off the streets and put the onus on the people that are either renting out to find people that are either using public transit or put the parking on their own property or whatever, but let's make sure that our houses don't burn down, kind of thing.
I've not received any official recommendations or reports from fire that they're having any access issues on any residential neighborhoods. So the next item is I can give an update, but if we get into any discussion, Councillor Beddoes may want to recuse himself. But the update is so we'll defer this item until the next report, if that's to your liking. So we'll move on to work with the Sauk Region's Community Health Network to source funding for their Lot A complex. Major funding applications have not been successful to date. The next BC housing call for proposals is expected sometime within the next 12 to 18 months. And accordingly, the memorandum of understanding that we have with the Sauk Region Communities Health Network has been extended to May 31st, 2023. And members of Searchin and district representatives are scheduled, I believe, next week to meet with the BC's seniors advocate on funding possibilities. Again, if you saw the budget today and the discussion of a complex in Kamloops, that is exactly what needs to happen in our communities. It's very similar to the project that's being planned in Sauk, proximal to shopping and groceries and pharmacy. And so we're really hoping that with some help from the seniors advocate, we can be a little bit more successful in funding for that very important piece of work that's going to happen on Lot A.
Yeah, Ms. McKenzie, the seniors advocate, was invited to the Sauk Aid Friendly Committee meeting a couple of weeks ago. And indeed, she did identify that a Lot A with a community of 15,000 people is perfectly positioned. So she accepted the invite by Mary Dunn from Searchin to come out to Sauk to meet with the mayor and others. And she was, she will hopefully advocate with BC Housing for that next uptake in 2023. And yeah, so I think it's a great next step. Yeah. Yeah, Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm just curious, there's going to be obviously a major housing component here, and there's going to be rental income. I'm assuming that it's just not possible to make it happen without grant funding from BC Housing, or is there some business model that would actually allow it to just move forward with another developer? Or
yeah, so if you recall, we did put out a request for expression of interest to private sector before we signed the MOU with Searchin. We didn't get any responses to that. Part of the vision for Searchin is to have this sort of as an anchor for their operational model going forward. So they're really hoping that they can find grant funding and then be the property manager and set them up for sustainable operations going forward. So yeah, there's that opportunity. My recommendation, my suggestion to council is let's stay the course, see if we can get this funded by BC Housing. And I believe that we did make that commitment when we extended the MOU to May of 2023. The next item is to explore public plaza partnership with Evergreen Shopping Center. So as I reported on October 18th, 2021, council has approved the subdivision development of portion of 6671 Wadhams Way. Discussions with the owner of Evergreen Shopping Center continue, and more information will be provided as it comes. And again, as I reported, we have a signed agreement to subdivide off a small piece of land and sell it to the shopping center. The agreement has been executed by both parties. The value of the transaction was established by a third-party appraisal that was commissioned by the District of Sauk, and discussions continue. So we'll update the public as more details become available. And the last item that's on our now. Reminds me of elementary school. The last item on our now action items is to complete our asset management investment plan. This work has been identified. It will identify the total investment required to fund the annual depreciation of our capital assets. It'll also provide different strategies to fund depreciation. Council will be asked to choose a method and an amount of annual depreciation that they wish to fund. This work is 70% completed now, and we've applied for a $60,000 grant from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. It's been submitted. We were hoping to hear in February whether it was going to be successful or not. So hope it's imminent that we're going to hear, and we can finish this work. But if we get to the point where we have a capital asset management investment plan, we'll know exactly what the annual depreciation on all of our assets are, what we need to spend on an annual basis to keep them current. Doesn't mean that we have to totally fund depreciation. There was a change in the public sector accounting practice in 2009 where we have to report depreciation. We don't have to fund depreciation, but we would like to lessen that gap a little bit, and we'll give council the tools to make that informed decision.
Now, through me to Ms. Gray, our assets in Sauk are something in the order of 150 million, are they not? Roads and wastewater and.
Yes, correct. I don't have the
You don't need to give me an
exact number, but
I
yes,
know you
it's
like doing
around.
that.
I got all my handy bag of tricks here. Yeah, the total net asset value as of 2020 was $116 million.
Okay.
So it's a lot. 42 in land, and then roads and sidewalks is another 58 million alone. So those are two big significant asset pools.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
The next item is to develop an annual planning and budget process. So I did speak a little bit about this on the now action items, the first action item that we talked about. But this really, as I said, this is the foundation to our communication engagement strategy that that we will hope to push forward annually. So this whole planning and budget cycle is really important. The 2022 budget is our second planning and budget cycle attempt using the current framework. We'll improve this each year as we go along. But the goal is to improve both internal and external engagement and provide better information on priority-based budgeting. So we can't be all things to all people. We can't fund everything that we wish to fund. So getting better at understanding what our priorities are, and then putting resources behind those priorities is really where we're pushing this stuff to. And then that information and that input from citizens to give council, some a better feel for what the priorities actually are.
Councillor St. Pierre.
My understanding is that one of our staff, I think Ms. Temple, worked with the schools and did some amazing work in setting up council in the schools where they had to deal with budget issues, and they had to wrangle with resources and where are we going to put our money and so on. And they had quite the passionate discussions at that level. I was just hoping that kind of wonderful work could keep on happening. And given that it's obvious that if kids are learning this stuff and potentially bringing it home to their parents and saying, so where would you spend your money? Where do you want it? It's a great way to reach out, and obviously preparing our next generation to know how this all works. So I was really impressed with that particular initiative, and I hope we're going to have lots more.
Yes, I heard some stories as well. It's not good to make your first big purchase a brand new vehicle when you have to pay for heating and food. But yes, it's that's certainly where we want to get. It's we've got lots of priorities as a community, and this is complex stuff. And you guys that sit around the horn certainly understand that. But hopefully we can provide that understanding to more people as well, and that just helps us getting through these planning and budget cycles and making sure we're spending money where the priorities are at.
And just wanted to add one thing to that is similar. I think the OCP did it. They had a handout at schools when you guys did the early engagement with the OCP. So when that went out, I already hit up Ms. Moog. I was like, hey, I want to budget one of these. So definitely that would be on our radar too, to engage with the adult population, but as well as the kids, because I think they got a lot of good feedback from that. It was just a fun exercise and activity. So I was already kind of thinking of a way to do some sort of budget one potentially, and just to raise awareness about budgets in general. So it's definitely on our radar for sure.
That's right. And every elementary school kid wants to be a firefighter. So, it could skew the numbers a little bit.
We'll make them account.
So we have one item under each of the two goals for the next items on the strategic priority chart. And the item under goal number 2 is to create policy aligning with climate adaptation and mitigation strategy. So as I said earlier, the climate action plan, which we're calling our adaptation and mitigation strategy now, is scheduled for completion in the summer of 2022. The climate action coordinator position ends in August of 2022. And I'm suggesting tonight that policy work coming from the climate action plan should be included in the July 2022 strategic priorities chart if this full-time position is supported by council. The full-time position, as you know now, is in the 5-year financial plan, but my commitment is to bring this back to council before we fill that position permanently. And the last item on the strategic priorities chart, council priorities, is review zoning and bylaw recommendations in the new official community plan. So originally the OCP was scheduled for completion in January of 2022. The OCP advisory committee has now completed their work, and the draft bylaw will advance to council for further consideration. Bylaw adoption is required before we move into amending other policies and bylaws. So that work's been pushed back a little bit, and so the policy work that follows behind that will be pushed back a little bit as well. Council's got some tough work to do, and I just want to acknowledge when we got into this OCP work, where 18 months ago or whenever it was, we had a discussion, and I suggested that council sort of participate with the OCP, but don't get into it where you don't come to this point now where the draft comes to council and you don't have an open mind. And you guys have done an exemplary job of staying at arm's length, staying informed. But I think that council is really well positioned now to take this draft and do the very important work that we suggested you will have to do after the committee work is done here. So look forward to working with you through that as well. And just quickly, I'll go through the operational strategies that are on the strategic priority chart. So we'll start with administration and the community economic development plan. That plan was approved by council in December. It's a great plan. Really looking forward to the CAO office and planning right now are sort of straddling this, and I'm handing it off to planning, and the report that went to council on the additional resources in February here, that report suggested that we're not going to go forward with the manager of planning at this point in time, but we will go ahead and hire again for the community act dev position. So that's in the works right now. The second item under administration, which actually now has been handed off to operations, is alternate or additional office space at District Hall. So as you know, I hope we're starting this week on the renovations to the washroom upstairs and to the fire hall number 1. That's projected to be about a six-month project. But we're also working with an architect to look at creating additional space on the main floor. So where it looks like it may be going right now is a second story on the other wing for further growth. But when we have some mock-ups and some better idea of what that looks like, we'll bring that forward for council to have a look at. Social media guidelines, we really are focusing heavily now on the Let's Talk platform. And I think that the feedback and the value that we have around that, as opposed to spending a lot of time on social media channels right now, is the best position for us to be. The website refresh, I'm not sure if you've seen any subtle changes, but we have moved to a new host, and my understanding from our communications coordinator is that the functionality is much better, and we're well on our way to that website refresh. And the public participation standards operating guidelines are pretty much done. We're following the International Association of Public Participation, the IAP2 spectrum for engagement, and our policy is based on the work of IAP2, and council will see that at some time as well.
Okay, Mr. Council, we'll take a quick break, 5 minutes at this point, and
All right, do I need an escort down to a washroom or something? How do we work?
no, you're on your own. Councilors are on their own.
Water.
All right, back at it.
All right, thank you. We'll get back into the operational strategies. Next on my list is the planning and development. Their strategies on the chart right now are amenity reserve policy review, the agricultural land exclusion policy, which I believe is complete now, and the development process bylaw updates. So maybe I'll ask Mr. Powell to give us an update on those 3 items.
So the amenity reserve policy review and the development procedures bylaw update, those are going to be reappearing, or what we're suggesting for 2022. And that coincides with the review of the official community plan. So a lot has developed through that process. And as was highlighted earlier, the anticipated adoption in January of this year would have coincided with us having this, but given the extended timeline and what's developed throughout this engagement and review process for the official community plan, we're seeing new opportunities to be explored. And so staff will tackle that this year as part of those tasks. The agricultural land reserve exclusion policy, you'll recall earlier last year, a motion was supported by council regarding those exclusions. So specifically the exempted parcels as well as municipal projects. So that's what we've looked at on the interim, but we also know that there's the much larger ALR parcels and those exclusions. And that is something that we can take a look at in future as resources allow for, but certainly the OCP has been the big task that we've been challenged with so far, and look forward for adoption and those other 2 items being completed.
To St. Pierre.
Through the chair to staff. One of the things that has been coming up just regularly for about 3.5 years for us at least has been the 10% affordable housing contribution, and how difficult it was to interpret it, what exactly that was supposed to do, and exactly how effective it was in terms of actually providing resources for getting more affordable housing in our community. I'm realizing that I was under the impression that we were doing something on that, and I was wondering if you could refresh me on that and where we might be.
So that is number 3 on the 2022 operational strategies that the department's putting forward. As it stands right now, it's basically been the practice of what staff have been doing for these affordable contributions. And that's been included in the staff report to inform council that should they be wishing to support a proposal coming forward, this is how staff has recommended the applicant provide their contribution for their portion of development. As a policy that would define this a lot clearer, as well as when we have initial conversations with applicants, we can point them in the direction of the policy, which spells out which options that they could consider.
You'll be happy to know that that was one of the outstanding things that I was like, is this one thing?
Thank you. Moving on to finance. There's 3 items under finance. Each of them has been talked about in various pieces of the presentation tonight, but the engagement plan for the 2022 5-year financial plan, capital project reporting updates, and review organizational chart and proposed new positions for 2022. So that's all been completed. Would you like to add anything?
Just to further add, as Mr. McKinnon stated, those are going to be basically ongoing recurring items as part of the district operations now. So similar to Mr. Paolo, stay tuned for 2022 operational strategies. That will be more on the ground internal process improvements that we're going to focus on for this year, as well as working with Mr. Paolo and Mr. Carter on some bigger asset planning, asset investment plans.
So we'll move on to operations. Director Carter is actually on vacation, and I'm glad he's been able to take some time off. So he left on Friday. He's off this week. So hopefully he's getting some rest and relaxation. The first item on operations was the subdivision development standards bylaw revision. I know an awful lot of work is going into that bylaw review. We've had a few bits and pieces coming, but you can anticipate a full review of the bylaw coming forward to council. Likely not until after the OCP has been adopted. just so if there's anything that's is tangential to the OCP, we can include it in the bylaw and not have to bring it back a second time. Design completion of key transportation corridors. Certainly a passion of Mr. Carter, and I think he's doing an exemplary job of making sure that we are in a position to be successful with all of these grants that are coming down the pike. So that design work, making sure that we have those reports in our desk drawers as these opportunities come up are extremely important. Makes it a little fun for finance to find the funding sometimes, but again, you know, we've got some ambitious projects here, and I think we're funding the correct stuff, but it's always at the expense of other things. So we're cognizant of that. Wastewater treatment plant expansion. The project is on track. It'll be completed by late in 2023. I believe construction is slated to start later on this year. Councillor Beddoes, actually, we just gave you some information. I should have been a little bit more prepared on that, but it's going out to tender. The novation agreements are in place, and it's on track for completion by the time that the grant required it to be. And lots of work still going on, the inflow and infiltration mitigation strategy for our pump stations. We know that the Helgeson pump station in particular, that catchment area has got some issues with I&I. I believe that we've identified most of the worst spots, and we'll be now tracking to see what sort of improvements we have on rainwater getting into our sanitary sewer collection system. And the tree management purpose-based strategy that is being picked up here again and getting some feedback, as Councillor St. Pierre suggested was on the last land use committee meeting. Just getting some feedback on what are the most important pieces of a purpose-built strategy to get this back on the agenda and get it back in front of council. So we know that we don't want to do a whole bunch of work on council until we bring back the strategy and get the okay to move forward with this again. Corporate services, you know, they support every facet of the organization in various ways. Their priorities on the operational strategies are continue to update and modernize bylaws and policies, and to improve our records management program. Updates?
So the bylaws and policies are, of course, ongoing, and we're just working with other departments to bring those forward as resources allow. And the update I can provide on records management is we have conducted interviews for a student to be hired for a 4-month stint this summer, and we are just waiting for notification of a grant approval to fund most of that position.
In our last department, community safety, the building maintenance for Station 1, the renovations are starting as we speak. As I said, about a 6-month window for that project to be completed. And we are, I believe, Chief Ryder is meeting with the consultants on the fire master plan tomorrow, and that's getting close to being completed, but maybe I'll ask Chief Ryder to give us an update on those 2 items.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've got some things I can share with you at this point in time. So when I first arrived here, I did meet with Mitchell and consultants just to have a face-to-face and sort of got the lay of the land, if you will, on the master fire plan and the work he'd done to that point. I did have an opportunity to review a rough draft that he provided. From that point, we were asked to get a little more data to him so he could do some more comparisons and provide us with better feedback. As Mr. McKenna said, I do have a Teams meeting tomorrow for about 90 minutes scheduled with him. He wants to ask me a few more questions in preparation for another draft that we will be sent. And then at that point in time, Mr. McInnes and I will review it. After that, we're hopeful that we can move things forward. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule, which is a good thing. One of the things we decided that we may do is have them come back here, pandemic pending, so to speak, and inform all of our staff as to what the final draft may look like, and it give us an opportunity to ask some questions and get further information from them. Then at that point, we would look at scheduling an in-camera meeting with council. And then from there, there's probably going to be some public engagement work that needs to be done. So that's where I'm at. I am looking forward to having more discussion tomorrow, just to sort of hone in on some of the finer details and ask some questions of the consultant. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And I think that brings your portion of the night to an end. Is that correct? CEO McInnes?
That is correct. So I'll throw up the advocacy issues there and turn it over to you, Councillor Bateman.
Okay. Could you leave that up on the screen, that last slide? So yeah, so as part of these 6-month strategic plans, we as council have identified a series of advocacy items. The mayor kindly provided me with a report on her particular priorities. So I can read through those and give you highlights of it. And I'll tell you about a couple of the ones that are my responsibilities on this list. So we'll start with enhanced transit service. Now she, just today, the Victoria Regional Transit Commission, which she is the appointee to, they had a meeting. As she says here, BC transit staff have done wonders to keep the system going and to meet demands over this pandemic period. There's been an issue around the recruitment and retention of drivers. Well, there are currently 30 drivers going through 7 weeks of training. So that'll bring their contingent back up to proper levels. The base budget for 2022 was approved today. The West Shore Local Area Transit Plan was introduced at the meeting. And of course that we have a SUC Local Area Transit Plan, which was approved in 2020. It was stalled out by COVID. And it's slowly being rolled out. They've introduced some new eSUC runs. But this, as the mayor says, is subject to funding sources. And so COVID-19 recovery funding is essential to get BC Transit back into its own master planning processes. And BC Transit is very much focused on rapid bus, right? We all know about the bus lanes, the fact that there will be rapid bus terminuses in Langford, one at the Belmont Mall and one at the new exchange on the Langford Exchange. And that will cut 20 minutes from the commute downtown. So ideally we already in SUC have a really strong transit ridership, the best in the CRD, tied with Esquimalt. And I think we're the shining star for transit use. And that, of course, is so critical to our 7% solution approach. So that's enhanced transit service. Little River Crossing funding. We all know there's been some frustration there. The mayor continues to advocate to our MLA and to Minister Osborne. And there's hopes that the next round of funding possibilities will bring that project back to life. And again, it's one of those, it's all there in the drawer. So it's patience and persistence. Regional Health Center, the mayor has had like 6 or 7 meetings in the last month. She continues to lobby hard for improved healthcare facilities in SUC in collaboration with the Primary Healthcare Services Working Group and West Coast Family Medical Clinic. And she'll be talking to the Premier again on later in March on this subject. Pesticide and Rodenticide Ban, as we heard the other week, the mayor's part of a Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy local government working group on rodenticides. They continue to meet on a monthly basis. VimQ. Now, could you pop that back up? Okay, we have VimQ inclusion. Now, that's the Vancouver Island Major Crimes Unit. This remains a significant issue for Souk. This is a matter of ECOM and 911 dispatch funding. The question of how much the province covers, how much the federal government covers. The mayor has spoken eloquently about this a number of times, so I won't struggle further with that. First Nations relations, the MOU working group with the Souk and the district and the Sauk continues. The Sauk Housing Solutions Lab, the mayor, Councillor Beddoes, myself, CAO McInnes, Mr. Palau, and Ms. Hooper have all participated. And that is now moving into the next phase as it hones in on some practical, tangible solutions to address housing needs on the First Nation, and yet also applicable to the district at large. We have the CRD First Nations Relations Committee that the mayor chairs, and that continues. She's also the vice chair of the TMEC Treaty Advisory Committee. Mental health and addiction resources, that's under the Souk Homelessness Coalition, which I'm co-chair of, and we have our third and final strategic plan meeting on March 19th at the Baptist Church. And this new era of health and housing being looked at as co-benefits, right? So the Greater Victoria Coalition has just this month launched a new health and housing steering committee. And again, that's wraparound. So where you live is you can get the supports right in place. What else have we got here? We're advocating for a lot of things, patiently, persistently, and with as much attention as we can give to these areas. Gas tax funding, the UBCM Select Committee on Local Government Finance at the last UBCM convention brought forward quite a dense document on local finance reform of how the province deals with supporting us in the downloads that have been happening, such as mental health, housing, these issues. So the Josie Osborne, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, recently signed that MOU with the UBCM. So we will be seeing outcomes of that, as we did in the budget today with a promise of funding for climate action by local governments. Moving on, local enhanced roadside assessment testing. That is something that the Age Friendly Committee has been working on for 3 or 4 years now. Minister Farnworth has promised continued testing in the capital through Coast Capital in Souk. For those who receive a request to have a roadside assessment, and this is continuing pending an evaluation of the pilot program. And finally, on my list here, we have the moratorium on Vancouver Island wolf hunting and trapping. Now that the mayor has prepared a proclamation. March 24th is Wolf Awareness Day. This is a day to highlight our need to coexist with larger carnivores in the district and in BC at large. And of course, if you were reading the paper today, you may have seen an article about BC's continuation of the wolf cull throughout the province to support the regeneration of the caribou populations. So it's a complicated matter. And of course, we've had some local issues here in Souk with a wolf taking out a couple of stray cats or dogs. So it's coexisting is not easy. Biodiversity is a priority. So on that note, does anyone else have any other thoughts on their own advocacy efforts? Have I covered the waterfront? Councillor St. Pierre.
Don't know if it qualifies as advocacy. What I'm working with CR Fair on, I'm going to work on trying to develop a regional food policy council. And that's moving forward with basically a group that's trying to get some funding to determine what sort of mandate this group would have, what sort of governance structure they would be looking at, and how to approach the various key players. And that work continues. So that hasn't actually dropped right off the map. I know that our council approved working with this particular group, but then the funding fell through. They are continuing that work, and I've been working with them. So that's about it.
Would it be okay to ask about this farm village concept, which is coming to the Climate Action Committee tomorrow, a presentation? Or is that premature at this point?
I think that the only thing that I'll say at this point, because it is a little bit premature, is that it's with gratitude to a very passionate group of people in Souk, nearly about 10 years ago, who wanted to develop a farm village over on Helgeson, and got quite a ways into it, but didn't quite pan out. And thanks to their generosity, the Climate Action Committee tomorrow will be looking at one of their legacy projects. So we'll see how that goes.
Councillor Beddoes, anything on the Sea Park front or?
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted for a second. The biggest thing we're scheduling a workshop to find out, just poll to find out if there's other areas in the next 5 years that we can advocate for, more another ice surface, pickleball courts. And we're had a workshop scheduled, but we had to cancel because our manager at Sea Park has resigned. And for personal reasons, only been 6 months in. And her last day would have been our workshop. So we thought it's really unfair. The other thing is I'm going to float about the workshop is that maybe it might be time to have more than just a commission involved and ask some members of the community, school trustees, and a few more to sit in this workshop and see if we can flush out where some of the recreation needs are going to be in the next few years. I mean, we've got the sports box going up there. I know the pickleball people would want pickleball courts. We've been lobbied for another ice arena. Of course, it all costs a lot of money, but it all starts with an idea. So I'm kind of excited about getting that going. And I think that my colleagues in the room here that will be involved in that, they're probably be included and to try and see if we can find out what people want in this community. We poll them about the OCP, we poll them about all these other things, but we haven't really done an in-depth discussion as where we want some of the recreation for the kids and the youth and everything else. So we're looking into that. And once we get a new director, we have our manager, we have a temporary manager coming in from Panorama Leisure Center, being confirmed of that today. I think the idea there is that this lady's experienced and she will help us out for the next 6 months until we get a permanent replacement. So we are moving ahead, but it's fits and starts until we get things going. And the sports box, once the weather improves, we'll get our concrete down and hopefully get that finished. So looking forward to that. That's about it for the.
Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I think for getting some community input on what people would like to see for community recreation, not just for kids, but for adults too. Because I think we know about pickleball. Everybody wants pickleball courts, and I think that's good. But yeah, I think if we can put together some a survey similar to some of the other surveys that have been done and just query people on what they would like to see for recreational facilities. That would be helpful. I've been attending the South Island Prosperity Partnership Municipal Partners meetings. They have a career fair with South Nation that they're planning for September. They mentioned some micro start programs that UVic and Royal Roads are holding. So they're small, not degree programs, but short programs just to kind of upgrade people's skills. It's microstartvc.com. You can find information on it there. As far as the OCP and also the Community Act Dev Committee, Dallas Gislason said he would be more than happy to come out to Souk and provide input on economic trends, as long as we're building housing, he said. So that was, I thought that it might be good to invite him to a CEDC meeting, and I guess maybe it's a little late for the OCP committee, but it would be good to invite him to come and address the Community Act Dev Committee. And that's about it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Lajeunesse. I'll just add that we as a council, all of us, met with the School District 62 trustees last week, I think. I'm having trouble keeping track. And that was 2 hours, very lively session. You know, I think the takeaway is that, as one of the trustees said, Souk got all the new schools in the 90s. And now Langford and Colwood, because of population demographics and the explosive growth, all the attention is on those areas with, I think it's North Langford, South Langford, North Colwood are the next major school projects. And we have a Sun River Elementary slated for opening in 2027. I think I got that straight. So I guess we chirped and made some noises and said, you know, hey, what about us? We're growing too at a 16% from 2017, this latest census. So anyway, it was a really lively session and positive, and it was the first time that trustees and councillors had come together to speak to each other and share their thoughts. So at the end of our 2 hours, the immediate decision was, let's do it again soon. And we've got 3 schools on the main road. Souk Elementary is in a prime town center location. It's the oldest elementary school in BC, 1912. It doesn't have the seismic upgrades. It doesn't have the sprinkler systems. And there's funding for, so anyway, there's lots on the table, and the feeling was we could be creative and start thinking short, mid, longer term. So I'm really looking forward to that. Anyone else thoughts on that meeting? Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I thought it was an excellent meeting. The more people working together in our community with schools and once we know what's happening, it works in with their transportation master plan, all these things all come together. And rather than everybody working in a little individual cell, it's nice to all thinking on the same footing. And I found it very refreshing. It was one of the better meetings I attended in the last 3.5 years. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Councillor St. Pierre?
I was really happy to know that the trustees and the school district is interested in community schools and interested in working with the community to make sure that we have amenities integrated in with all that. Because they've got land, and as they pointed out, they've got land and maintenance, and they're hoping for partnerships to actually develop amenities, with the district, and that's very exciting. I know that one of my concerns is that, when people come out of Sun River or wherever and they have to go to Langford for gymnastics or judo or other sports, there's really not much options about getting cars off the roads. There's not much, there's no way to actually stop that from happening because people want activities for their kids. And knowing that the school district is interested and that everybody's kind of on board with having stuff locally is awesome. And looking forward to seeing what we can do.
Okay, I think that's it for advocacy.
Yeah, that's it for advocacy. That's it for my report. I got one more slide with a recommendation that the committee of the whole receive for information, the strategic priority chart 2021 fourth quarter report.
Moved by Councillor Beddoes. And we don't vote on this, do we? Or do we? Yes, we do. So we'll have a vote. All approved. Okay. So with that note, I don't believe there's any new business. We have no one in the house to ask the same questions. So I'll call for adjournment. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, and all approved.